What treasures that we 100% know existed still haven't been found? Story 1. Tomb of Alexander the Great. Cleopatra and Mark Antony. Funny thing is, they are all probably buried in Alexandria beneath the modern city. I saw a documentary recently where an archaeologist was looking for his tomb and dug in a park in Alexandria, finding a bust as Alexander buried very deep and further collapsed caverns. But those caverns are under blocks of flats and loads of development, so I've no idea if they'll ever be able to explore them. My wife is from Alexandria. Her grandfather was an archaeologist there who used to tell her about the constant struggle between excavations and city building. The whole area is covered, is an ancient site, literally built over the old city, by ancient sites, so they quickly built over everything because if they discovered something they wouldn't be able to. A lot of bribes and looking the other way or there would be no modern city there. Crazy. King Richard's tomb was found under a parking lot in England. It wasn't a tomb, he was buried in the ground. If I remember rightly, he wasn't buried in any ceremony and was seen as a contentious ruler after Henry VII took over, so no one really knew where he was buried after his memorial was removed during the English Reformation under Henry VIII. There was a rumor his corpse was thrown in the river, but it was obviously proven wrong. Yeah, he was tossed in the ground at the nearest church to the site where he was killed in battle, IIRC, and his bones showed signs of post-mortem trauma consistent with it having been paraded around and displayed for people to see. Story 2. I went to college beside that museum in Boston that got robbed. They never found the thieves or the paintings. The famous Gardner Museum theft. No one knows what happened to the paintings still. Yes, it drives me crazy because a part of me thinks it was just some thugs that had no idea how to sell them and the paintings are rotting away somewhere. That's what the FBI believes. The paintings were transported to Philadelphia in an attempt to sell them. Organized crime will sit on things for years and years. Hell, look at religious artifacts that were looted from other cultures or the British Museum. Story 3. The shipwreck of Fleur de la Marche. Sunk with the equivalent of $2 billion in today's money. This one and the treasure fleet are the only ones that seem super plausible to me, because ocean. You know, of all the lost treasures that I learned about from that book my 7-year-old bought at the Scholastic Book Fair a few months back. I can still smell the Scholastic's Book Fair 25 years later. It was a magical time most Americans have experienced. Wayside School Gets a Little Stranger was one of my hauls. I had so many Goosebumps books that I never once read. Much like Pokemon cards, I just had to have to be cool but never knew what to do with them at all. You'll be pleased to know that the Scholastic Book Fairs are still happening. I now enjoy it via proxy by looking through the pamphlet with my kids and circling everything that catches our interest, and then load them up with cache day of. Books are so amazing, and if I'm going to splurge on the kids, books are probably one of the best avenues. They love the weekly library visits too, but there is nothing like building out your own personal library. My son also fell in love with Wayside books in 2nd grade, just like me. So those are still going strong too. Unfortunately, he didn't like the Mrs. Piggle-Wiggle series, which saddened me, but I think those were originally published in the late 40s/early 50s though, so I get it. Wayside series is still strong and holds up today. Story 4. Portrait of a Young Man by Raphael. Missing since the end of WW2, all signs point to it having been sold for traveling money by Nazi Hans Frank. I'm convinced that the majority of missing artwork from WW2 is held by private collectors. Like that missing Picasso painting that just happened to be spotted in the living room of the former First Lady of the Philippines. Wait, this sounds like a juicy story. Where can I read more? If you're okay with Guardian. The most right painting on the photo. Story 5. Tomb of Genghis Khan. I heard a theory that he didn't have an actual tomb, they just left his body somewhere to be eaten. Sky burial. It's an interesting way to go. My mama went to Tibet years back and described it to me when I was a kid. Blew me away that people would do something like that, but at the same time I can appreciate the sense of not letting your body just rot/go to waste. I recently read a biography of Khan called Genghis Khan and the Creation of the Modern World. In it, the authors conclude that, most likely, he didn't have a tomb, as others here have said. What he did have was his spirit banner, which was held as a treasured artifact by the Mongolian peoples. Whether or not it truly belonged to him, I'll leave to experts. It was seized by the Soviets during the invasion of Mongolia in the 1920s, and disappeared. Likely, IMO, destroyed by the Soviets in an attempt to quell resistance there. Likely, but not definitively. Slight correction, Genghis Khan and the Making of the Modern World. It's one of the best popular history books I've ever read. I recommend it to everybody. Do we know that there are treasures there? There are lots of legends about how they hid the burial site. But I've never heard that the site contained anything but bones. Supposedly, there were craftsmen from across the empire commissioned to create ornamentation for the tomb from gold and precious stones. It turns out that they were all con artists. It's just an empty box. The real treasure was the raping, murder, and pillaging with friends along the way. He didn't want us to forget that. Story 6. The Amber Room. There is a lake in Austria, Toplitz, that is rumored to be the hiding spot for Nazi gold, secret weapons, and even parts of the Amber Room, hidden by SS up until 1945. So far multiple expeditions found nothing in the depths. They did actually pull $72 million in forged sterling and a printing press out of the lake. A guy I know bought his first Porsche by diving up Nazi helmets from a lake in Austria and selling them to Americans who were paying insane amounts for World War II stuff. Best guess now is that it was destroyed. In the end, what's so compelling about the Amber Chamber is not what's been lost, but what so many have labored passionately to find. In St. Petersburg, craftsmen have toiled for decades to recreate the pride of the nation. In Kaliningrad, relics stolen to a once mighty castle are being recovered and deep beneath the surface. A historic mine is slowly revealing its own long-buried secrets. It seems fitting that the Nazis' divisive aim to covet and destroy great cultural treasures has only served to unite nations in a cooperative effort to preserve their heritage. There's no real, hard evidence that the Amber Chamber was destroyed, and as more masterpieces continue to turn up, nearly 3/4 of a century after the war, perhaps the Amber Chamber is still out there, waiting patiently for someone to bring it back into the light. Josh Gates. More than likely it was stashed in a mine and the entrance to the mine dynamited. I watched a Modern Marvels episode on salt mines. Nazis used a salt mine to store gold and art. When retreating they ordered the citizens to dynamite it. The citizens had to orchestrate an explosion that seemingly accomplished that task but still left it accessible. Pretty interesting story. Story 7. The burial site of Genghis Khan is still unknown. It was not documented on purpose and it worked pretty well. Not document on purpose is the kind way to say they killed everyone who worked on it. And then killed the executioners. And then killed them, and such as. That is why none of us are alive to this day. Story 8. King John's crown jewels. Lost while crossing the Wash on the east coast of England. Over 800 years ago. I'm surprised this is so far down. Maybe they were found and melted down, or never lost and just stole. If they're still out there and are discovered they would be worth a fortune. It's also possible that in fact there's not very much to it, we don't really know very much about what was lost, the items, their descriptions or compositions. Story 9. The Three Brothers. An absolutely beautiful set of jewels that simply vanished from record, which is very surprising as they are beautiful and large. Did they have a wand, a stone, and a cloak? Anyone check the British Museum out the back? You never know. Story 10. About 83% of the caches from Byron Price, The Secret. Check out the show Expedition Unknown. There's several episodes focused on the search, most notably the Boston Puzzle where they helped search and documented the find. 3 have been confirmed found, but in all likelihood there have been more. People probably found them and didn't know what they were or didn't care. I worked at the Waterfront Theater in the Outer Banks where one of these is supposed to be. Can confirm that if he didn't tell anyone about its location then it definitely got removed during renovations. Story 11. The missing Faberge eggs. There are about 7 still missing, and only an old black and white photo remains of some of them, along with their descriptions. 7 eggs in the Imperial series are missing. 1886, the hen with sapphire pendant egg, last seen 1922. 1888, the cherub with chariot egg, last seen 1922, may have been exhibited in New York City in 1934. 1889, the Necessaire egg, sold by Wartski in 1952, has not been seen since. 1897, the mauve egg, photo frame, surprise, still extant. 1902, the Empire nephrite egg, the provenance of the found nephrite egg is contested. 1903, the Royal Danish egg. 1909, the Alexander III commemorative egg. Private collectors who might not even know what they are. Several last ones rediscovered came from such sources. I remember seeing Faberge eggs in a bind film and reading everything I possibly could about them afterwards. Man, I haven't thought about that in years, and this just flicked some switch and brought it all back. Story 12. The enormous golden menorah from the Second Temple. The Romans took it after sacking Jerusalem. Some people think it's being hidden by the Vatican, but I think more likely it was melted down and will never be found. It is far more likely that it is somewhere in modern-day Turkey. According to Procopius, Belisarius reclaimed it from the Vandals in Tunis in 533, who had looted it in the sacking of Rome a century earlier. Though there is no record of it being sent back to Constantinople, so it might still be in Tunis. If it went to Constantinople, it's most definitely been melted down and turned to coins. Almost nothing made it out of the Fourth Crusade. It's heartbreaking to think of all the amazing history that was just melted into coins, or burned for the sake of burning it.